Hey everybody, it's me Amanda with Once in a Wild, and welcome back to Once in a Wild Wednesday, or welcome if this is your first time joining us today. And we're happy to meet and see everyone again, and I hope you had a wonderful week. And some of you I know are on your spring break, so happy spring break. And we've been really busy this week, so it's kind of flown by in one sense, and it's kind of been a long week in another sense. But we're thankful for that. So I hope everybody's doing well. We've got some really awesome animals for you guys to learn about today, as always. And I think we should just go ahead and get started, shall we? Oh my goodness, I think I'm already frozen. Well, we're back, and I'm sorry about that. Sometimes the camera shuts off, and what happens usually is if I sometimes play an extra video, like our little intro, when I come back, the camera doesn't work for some reason. So that's a little weird. It doesn't happen that often, but I just restarted everything, and it looks like we're okay. So I hope you guys can see me. Oh, I see one problem. Yes, let me make a quick adjustment here. That might be the solution right now. Let me see. Sorry, you guys, this is real life, of course. And if you joined us on the live stream before, you know, sometimes we have technical problems and it just happens. No big deal, right? It's just part of life. And I hope you guys can have a little patience with us and whatnot. I'm going to make sure that my internet's working and everything's good. I'll be right back, you guys. Okay, so I think that's enough prep. And hello to Keenan and Mom. And if you guys have never been here before, you are in for a treat because we're going to meet some really fun animals. And also, we can highlight your comments and questions on the screen, as you can see. Can everybody see me okay? Let me know if it looks good. I disappeared for a moment, but I'm back. And I'm happy to be here this week. So our first animal is actually hanging out right here on the table. Before I forget, I want to tell you guys a little bit about Once in a Wild. If this is your first time visiting us, or maybe you just need a little reminder, we are a mobile zoo based in South Texas, and we are actually in San Antonio, Texas. Settle down, Gremlin. Gremlin's usually a very calm animal, but he's running away from me today. I want to make sure you can see him. And by the way, I'm not hurting him in any way. I'm just giving him a little bit of a nudge so that he can come back onto the screen. But I guess he's going to keep turning around. But he's way back here. He's an axolotl. And Once in a Wild is our mobile zoo based in San Antonio, Texas. And we can bring the zoo to your classroom, birthday party, any type of event. We are doing in-person events again. And we're very excited to be doing more and more of those as we get out of our current situation little by little, right? We are still being safe, wearing masks and making sure to wash our hands and social distancing a little bit as well. But just to let you know, we are doing in-person events again. Very exciting. We have some upcoming events coming up very soon. The best way to kind of find out what we're doing is by following us on social media like Facebook and Instagram, as well as on our website, onceinawild.com. You can scroll to the bottom and find the links for our social medias. And you can also see usually what events are coming up right there on our homepage. So, but the best way is on social media. We've got a really fun Easter event coming up with our friends over at Once Upon a Party here in town. That's coming up on the 3rd of April, I believe. And at the end of March, we have Pet Fest, which is a great big event over in New Braunfels. And that's right next door to, right north of San Antonio. And that's going to be a great big event with lots and lots of vendors. And we're going to be out there too with some of our animals. So we hope to see you then. Hello, friends from Florida / Las Vegas. Are you in Las Vegas? I forget where you're hanging out nowadays, but you're usually in Florida. So hello, you guys. I see your message down below. And yeah, so we are a mobile zoo that can bring the zoo to you in person in town and also virtually if you're out of town. So if you happen to be somewhere else other than San Antonio, we have a lot of followers all over the place, right? Including in Florida, like I just said. And we can outreach to you virtually. And we've been doing a ton of virtual programs lately, which is kind of a neat thing that happened because of this whole COVID situation. It kind of forced a lot of us animal educators and all sorts of people in general to go virtual, or we had to close, right? So it's a really neat way to outreach all over the world. As long as you have internet access, we can bring the zoo to you virtually, which has been a lot of fun for classrooms and even just for fun, birthday celebrations, just because, and they're really, really cool. And they're similar to this that you're seeing right now. We don't have all of our like banners and logos everywhere on the Zoom. It's just a Zoom, but we are in the same studio typically right here with the purple backdrop and everything. And you get to select the animals that you would like to see for your personal Zoom room animal encounter. And those are a lot of fun and you get to learn a lot. So let's learn about our first animal. I'm going to go ahead and try to nudge him again. Let's see, oh, he's hungry. That's your problem. Okay, Gremlin, let's give you a treat. So Gremlin is a beautiful axolotl. He's a natural colored axolotl. They do come in different colors in the Care of Humans, but out there in the wild, they look just like him. And I know he's a little bit far away, but if you look really closely, you can see this dark critter over here. He was in a show this morning for one of our favorite clients, which is Valley Ranch HOA here in town. They did a virtual show this morning and we got to show them Gremlin and some other animal. I just gave him a pellet, which is a special diet for underwater creatures that are carnivores. This guy is a carnivore. Axolotls are a type of amphibian closely related to salamanders. And they are underwater salamanders. As you can see, they don't leave the water like a lot of other salamanders do once they grow up. They don't do that. They don't metamorphosize into an adult usually. And they are carnivores. So a carnivore-based pellet is a good, solid, staple diet for them to thrive on. But he also gets a varied diet, different types of pellets we feed him here. And also we feed him worms and other invertebrates like that, like crickets and roaches sometimes and all sorts of things. In the wild, they're going to eat the same thing. They're going to eat all sorts of other animals like small bugs, fish sometimes, maybe even other axolotls sometimes. If they're smaller than him, they are known to sometimes eat each other, which is called being a cannibal, right? That is definitely a natural behavior of a lot of amphibians and other animals in general in the wild because it's the wild and they need to be able to survive. Yes. By the way, this show is free today, but there are tipping options down below. Venmo and Cash App are my favorite ways to donate. But you can also donate by, of course, hiring us for your own personal encounter. That's a great way to donate too. We also have an Amazon wish list at onceinawild.com that you can donate items from our wish list to us, and that is really, really fun too. So just wanted to make sure I mentioned that. So again, this is Gremlin. We do have 3 axolotls here at Once in a Wild, Ghost, Gremlin, and Goblin. And Ghost is our white axolotl, who's actually an albino. And Gremlin, like I said, is the natural color they come in. I don't know how closely you can see him. If I focus a little bit more. Maybe a little bit better that way. There he is. So pretty. I think that he is so gorgeous for a wild type natural color axolotl. But that makes sense for him to be this color, right? Because in the wild, they need to blend into stuff. If he were white like Ghost, he would not blend in and he would stand out and therefore either be eaten by something or be seen by his prey, right? So when you're a predator, it helps to be camouflaged. And when you're a prey, it helps to be camouflage. And he's both. So out in the wild, they would be eaten by other animals sometimes because this is about as big as they get. They're only about this long. maximum, and more or less. So not the biggest animal on the block for sure, but they're also carnivores. They have to blend in to stalk their prey too. Most of the time they'll be hanging out on the bottom of the riverbed where they live, kind of like he is right now on the bottom of his little tank here. This is just a display tank, by the way. He lives in a much larger habitat behind the scene, but this is a great way to display him for the show. And they do exactly this. They're going to kind of scoot down to the bottom and just hang out. You can see his gills flapping around like this. I don't know if you can see that, but his gills, that's how he breathes. They flap like this. Pretty awesome. And that's going to never go away in this species. So all amphibians start their life underwater like him. They're going to be laid from an egg by their mother. All amphibians, frogs, toads, newts, salamanders, axolotls, all those guys start their life as a gooey, gummy egg. And usually there's lots and lots of siblings involved. They're definitely not only children type animals. There are a few type of amphibians like poison dart frogs, for example, that lay only a couple of eggs or even one egg at a time. But typically they'll lay them in increments, so they'll have siblings, but it won't be like all at once like most amphibians. Most amphibians, when they go to lay their eggs, it's tons of eggs, like hundreds of them at once in the water, right? And that's where they develop. Some amphibians will stick their eggs to plants, and some amphibians will just lay them all over the place in the water, like some fish do. Fish are really similar in the way they reproduce. And then they're fertilized by the dad, of course, in the water. So external fertilization in the water. Isn't that interesting? And then if they are fertilized, they, of course, will hatch out. And they start their life as a little tadpole. And the tadpole will eventually metamorphosize, kind of like a butterfly does, into an adult creature like this. So what most amphibians do is they will start their life as a tadpole, right? And then they will start to they will have gills to breathe with at that point to be able to survive underwater and breathe. They have to be able to breathe water like a fish does almost. And eventually they will lose their gills little by little. They'll kind of shrink into their head. They will start growing lungs instead. And some amphibians also breathe with their skin and at least absorb a lot of nutrients with their skin and air and things. It's very strange. But they do most of the time gain lungs to be able to breathe air, right? And then they will eventually grow legs and be able to crawl up on dry land and kind of have like a half water, half land life. Sorry, guys. There we go. I'm still here, I swear. We're having all the problems today. I can feel it already. Yeah, we should be good now. I hope. Cross your fingers for us. We try our very best, but sometimes problems happen, but we're continuing on and trucking on. So my point is that this amphibian is very different. So this and some other amphibians like the Texas blind salamander, there's a few others that stay underwater their entire life. But this is the Mexican version. They're actually from Mexico City and a very tiny area called Xochimilco, and that is a river canal system in Mexico City that is very cold and very small and specialized. It's quite dark waters, very chilly waters, like I said, and also just a tiny little area. So unfortunately, that is the only place that this animal lives in the wild. So for that and many other reasons, this is a critically endangered species. Critically endangered, not just endangered, but critically, right? And the reason that they're critically endangered, they're considered critically, is because they're almost extinct in the wild, which is super sad. So just to give you a little bit of an example of how endangered they are. So in the last 25 years, more or less, they have gone from over 6,000 per square kilometer to only about 35 per square kilometer in that amount of years, about 20 to 25 years. So their numbers have dropped significantly, and they are almost extinct in the wild. The good news is that they are not nearly even close to being extinct in the care of humans. So they have been kept in captivity for many, many years by science labs, zoos, aquariums, and even as pets. You can have pet axolotls if you want to. I think they make a pretty good pet for the right family that takes care of them properly. They're a lot easier to take care of, in my opinion, than a fish, or most fish. They're kind of like having maybe like a betta fish or something like that. They're kind of an easier type aquatic animal, in my opinion, if you do your research and make sure and take care of them properly, feed them properly, all of that. And I'm more than willing to help you if you are interested in keeping an axolotl, by the way. I think they're fantastic. And they're really fun to keep. They're very entertaining, great personalities. Everybody has their own personality out of our 3 axolotls for sure, and the ones I've worked with in the past. But anyway, there's so very many of them because, number one, they have lots of babies when they have babies. So if you are being bred in the care of humans, you have less predators to eat the babies. And so many, many, many more babies are going to survive, right? If they are bred in the care of humans. So we are able to continue the species just by having them in human care. As long as humans are keeping them, they're going to be around. And what scientists are doing and conservationists are doing for the species in the wild is they're actually trying to clean up their habitat. Because what's happening, number one, they have a very small area to live in the first place, very specialized. There's not anywhere else you find them in the wild except for this tiny little river canal system that's also very cold, very murky, very specialized. So they're trying to clean up that environment because it has become very polluted over years and years and years. It has become full of trash. There are invasive species, which means animals that don't belong there, but that were placed there by humans, such as carp and tilapia and other large fish like that were placed in the river area around the Xochimilco Canal to be able to be fished by fishermen. So I guess there weren't enough larger fish to satisfy the needs of fishermen. So they went ahead and released a bunch of carp, tilapia, big game fish like that, which really aren't good for eating. Well, tilapia is, but carp aren't. They're more for sport, right? So they were released into the rivers around that, but rivers flow into each other, right? So eventually a lot of those bigger fish ended up in the same area that the axolotls live natively in the wild, and they were able to eat axolotls. And the axolotls weren't ready for so many predators. So a lot of them got eaten by other predators that don't belong there. And also they were eating the axolotls' food, like the worms and the bugs and the fish and everything that the axolotl was relying on. So that's a big problem. Another problem way back in the old days was they were being hunted by humans, which wasn't a huge problem when they weren't endangered. There's nothing really wrong with hunting for food and things like that if you are someone that lives off of the land and things like that. I'm not anti-hunting whatsoever. I think ethical hunting is a great thing, actually. But back in the old days, it was legal to hunt these guys, and there were no regulations on that. So that was also putting pressure on the species too, and many, many other issues that they have. So their environment's not very clean right now. They need to make sure and make it healthy again for the axolotl if they can. And if not, scientists are trying to figure out if they can maybe have another area be a releasable site for axolotls being bred in the care of humans. Someone's asking, where is Ghost? Ghost is in her enclosure behind the scenes. So Ghost, Gremlin, and Goblin are not kept together. They're actually more of a solitary type animal. Some people do keep axolotls together successfully of the same size, but axolotls can be cannibal sometimes. And if they get hungry enough, they might want to eat each other, even if they don't fit in each other's mouth. So axolotls could potentially eat one another's gills. They could eat one another's tail tips, fingers, toes, arms, and legs. It has happened to other axolotls in the past. The good thing about axolotls, though, if they get an injury like that, their body parts grow back very, very quickly and very successfully. So Ghost is in her own habitat by herself. It's honestly less stress on the axolotl, in my opinion. Now, to each his own. If you have axolotls successfully together in groups, I know a lot of people that keep axolotls together in groups, and they do just fine. But I think it depends on the axolotl's personality and etc. So we don't do that here because it's just not worth the risk, in my opinion. Look at him go. I think he wants another snack. Let's give him one. So again, these are just like pellets that are formulated for carnivores. Here you go. You want a carnivore pellet? I bet, oh, they really like these too. This is a different brand that I've used in the past. Different type, and they like it a lot. All three of them do. So that's where Ghost is. I did not see the photos. Where did you send them? I would like to see the photos. If you sent them to our social media, I will check, but let me know where you sent them. You did not know that they were endangered critically? They don't look very appetizing to me either. Hi, Richard. Good to see you. We missed you last week. Yeah, so I think that would be purely a survival reason to eat an axolotl or a frog. But a lot of indigenous people and people from all sorts of places, right? They eat amphibians. For example, bullfrogs are eaten. A lot of people eat frog legs and things like that, right? That's not too weird. I guess that's weird, but it's not too weird. But all over the world, bullfrogs of all different types and different types of amphibians are eaten. On Facebook Messenger, I will check. I will surely check, I promise. But I did not see them yet, but I sure will check. Okay? Thank you for sending me some pictures. I would love to see that. So yes, this is Gremlin, the axolotl. And again, he's the natural colored axolotl. You can see how well he blends into that dark floor. I'm sorry if you can't see him very well. Ghost is a lot easier to see. But Gremlin was actually in a show this morning, so I thought he would just continue and be in the show tonight. Very convenient for me. You're in New Orleans. I forgot where you were visiting. I didn't know if it was Vegas or what. I remember you said something about maybe gambling or going out in the town. Maybe that was in my head. My friends from Florida are with your great grandma in New Orleans watching. Hello, great grandma. It's so nice to meet you and have you on the show these last few times. Thank you so much for watching. I would love to meet you in person someday. And Gremlin is so cute. Thank you so very much. And you're welcome. You're very welcome. So who has questions about our axolotl friend? Axolotls are one of my favorite animals in the world. Can you tell? I have an axolotl tattoo right here on my arm. There's some really neat animals, and I love them so very much. Axolotls, again, are critically endangered species of salamander that never grows up. They kind of remind me of Peter Pan. They just want to stay babies forever. Their bodies do grow in size, but they never metamorphosize into a quote-unquote adult salamander, which would be like other salamanders, right? Losing their gills, getting lungs, going out on dry land. Now, axolotls can metamorphosize if their body is under extreme stress, but that would be a survival technique if they really had to. Say their water was too hot or way too cold or having lots and lots of poison or toxins in the waters. Their body could go into survival mode and actually metamorphosize into a salamander. But unfortunately, with the axolotl, they don't live very long after that. So it's a survival technique in the moment, but then they don't live much longer than a few months after that, which is really sad. Are they only freshwater? That's an excellent question. Yes, they are only freshwater. So this specific species, the axolotl, ajolote in Espanol, they are only found in Mexico City in the Xochimilco River Canal system. It is very cold waters, very murky or muddy, dirty looking waters. It's not really dirty. It's just full of natural properties that make it very dark. And then they also... what was I saying? Oh, yes, very fresh water. So very specialized animals, cold water, murky water, and always fresh water. They're not saltwater creatures. That's a great question. Most amphibians are not saltwater, right? There's a few that can tolerate brackish mixed salt and fresh water, or like true salt water, but most do not tolerate that type of water. Most like fresh water. Speaking of their care and water, they actually have to have dechlorinated or reverse osmosis water sometimes in order to keep them healthy. They cannot tolerate any kind of chemicals like chlorine, hard water, things like that. So you have to treat their water or use filtered water whenever you clean them or use anything. And you cannot use chemicals to clean their habitat at all. They cannot tolerate that whatsoever. So how can we help amphibians all around us? There are amphibians all around you all the time. Amphibians exist on every continent except for Antarctica. And that's for good reason, because Antarctica is way too cold and not much resources out there. But amphibians are extremely important to the natural environment. Not only are they sometimes food for other animals, right? They also eat a lot of pesky critters like bugs, flies, larvae of all sorts of insects, things like that. They help us to stay healthy. And we need a lot of animals to help us stay healthy these days, right? Especially now, but always. Humans have a lot of problems with disease. I don't know if you've noticed, but we have a lot of problems with disease sometimes. So we need more predators in the environment, even if they are endangered, right? We need more of them. Amphibians in general are becoming more and more scarce. Less of them around the world for lots of different reasons that I already listed about the axolotl. Amphibians all over the world are becoming endangered because of that too. There's even a such thing as a fungus affecting all sorts of amphibians that make them sick, and diseases for them too, and toxins and all sorts of things. But we need them and lots of other small predators like that to take care of lots of bugs, because then insects and other bugs can take over, we can get sick, or our resources can get eaten by those insects. Yeah, and it also helps to keep the environment healthier, because whatever population of prey animals like insects, they need to keep their numbers under control too, because if there's sick insects and bugs in the population, then some of the other healthy ones can get sick too. So it's a big balance. So we need predators and prey in the environment of all sizes, right? So how can we help amphibians? Maybe you guys can help me figure out how we can help amphibians. So one way, super easy, is to pick up your trash. Make sure you don't litter, right? No littering allowed. We don't recommend littering ever, for lots of animals' benefit, right? And human benefit too. It's never fun to live around trash. That doesn't help anybody. Amphibians can eat things like microplastics. So do lots of aquatic animals in the ocean, right? Microplastics are basically just tiny pieces of plastic that are all in the waters right now. All sorts of waters, ocean, fresh, everywhere. Lakes, rivers, everything you can think of. Ponds, where amphibians live and all sorts of animals drink water, and most animals drink water to survive, right? Amphibians even absorb water through their slimy skin too. But microplastics are a big problem for them. Large plastic too, plastic in general. So using less plastic is a great way to keep animals healthy. Recycling, right? That's another great way. What are some other ways that we can help amphibians? You tell me. Remember what they eat, right? They eat bugs. So how can we help them have a healthy diet? You guys are loving it. I love it too. The boys are wondering what happened to Ghost. Is she okay? Yeah, she's fine. Ghost is perfectly fine. She's just in her habitat behind the scenes. I think she was on the show not too long ago. She was at least on a virtual show that I had for a class. Yeah, Ghost is a girl, and she's my favorite of all the axolotls. She is awesome. Love her personality and everything. They have different personalities. Gremlin has a good personality too, but he's more... I don't know. He seems a little more intelligent than Ghost. No offense to her. But Ghost is a little bit silly. She's very goofy, clumsy, just the silliest little thing. I love her so much. But yeah, she's just fine. Thank you for asking. So if they eat bugs, would it be a good idea to poison their food with bug spray and all sorts of things? No, right? So there are lots of natural methods you can actually use in order to make sure that other animals don't become poisoned by your bug sprays and things like that. So we don't want to be washing that into the yard, because the toads and frogs that live in your backyard, they can also absorb the poison through their skin, and they can also eat the bugs that are being poisoned, which isn't good for them, right? Or anyone. There's many other methods that you can use. One really great way to get rid of lots of insects. We have one in our backyard. It's one of those hanging lanterns that sucks in the mosquitoes instead of using sprays. So we do have lots of mosquitoes here in Texas. It's just one of those things. It's hot here, and it also rains from time to time. So if you get standing water of any kind, you get lots of bugs, including gnats and mosquitoes. And we have one of those hanging lanterns that's just a light, and it attracts some of those pesky bugs, and it actually sucks them in. But it's a way not to use chemicals, right? And then you can empty it later when it sucks the bugs away for you. You can also invite lots of natural methods like animals to be able to eat the bugs for you, like a bat house. A bat box is a really cool way to invite bats into your backyard. It's actually kind of a misconception that bats will all like carry rabies and give you rabies. Bats want nothing to do with you. They just want to do their thing. And their main job, especially nocturnal, well, they're all nocturnal, but smaller bats that live in the United States especially, they are insectivores, right? And they're all nocturnal, so they're going to only come out at night anyway. You won't even really see them that much unless you're out there with a flashlight at night and you can see them, which is really cool. But they're just going to fly and eat all your pesky bugs for you. Bats eat lots of insects for us. And so putting up a bat box is a neat way, and perfectly legal, to put up in your tree or against the side of your house to invite bats. You can also invite screech owls, are a great way to help with larger bugs like cockroaches. They eat cockroaches. So they will actually go into a tiny nest box. So you can look it up how to make one, or you can buy one too, bat box or owl box. You can actually have larger owls for rats and mice, and you can have smaller owls for things like cockroaches and moths and things like that. They will eat those guys. One thing you don't want to ever do is use lots of bug sprays and chemicals, lots and lots of them. Now, I'm not saying never use chemical. That's impossible. We have to use chemicals to disinfect. And I understand we have to use, sometimes bug spray on our bodies and things like that. But you just want to make sure it's not being washed into the yard. You're disposing of them correctly. When you use chemicals, you're getting rid of them in a responsible way, right? That's realistic. However, what was I going to say? There are other means to be able to do that. Organic fertilizers, great idea. Excellent idea. Organic fertilizers, not blowing leaves too much, because there's critters out there living in the leaves. Maybe you can rake a little bit and blow every now and then if you have to. But blowing leaves every time the leaves fall is kind of excessive and ridiculous. Some people are actually taking a different kind of approach to a backyard in general and letting weeds actually just grow out there. And you can just trim the weeds, because animals kind of just live in your backyard the way it naturally grows, instead of just like mowing your lawn every single time, and allowing the critters out there to thrive. Inviting frogs into your life by building little toad abodes, which is a really fun word. Toad abode is a basically a little hide you can create out of either a half of a flower pot or any kind of little thing, a coconut shell or something that they can hide in. Little toads need somewhere to go to in your garden, and that will help to get rid of lots of mosquitoes and things. They are so happy that Ghost is okay. Yeah, Ghost is just fine. She's just taking a break today. Garlic spray is a good way to get rid of mosquitoes. Yup. So whenever I rarely use bug spray because I don't like it. I think it's terrible for you and everything. But I mean, I do it every now and then if I have to. I really love our bug lantern sucker thingamajig. That has worked really well in our yard. But if I have to go somewhere like camping and things, like I will. But I'll usually spray it away from like the grass and things like that. I'll try to spray it somewhere where the animals won't be affected. Also terrible for birds too. Birds can inhale those things and become sick too. You guys do garlic instead of chemical? That's awesome. I've never heard of that before. But yes, organic fertilizers, great idea as well. Okay. And the reason that is very important is because amphibians have a slime all over their body. It's called a slime coat. And that slime coat can actually absorb all sorts of chemicals too on accident. They absorb everything. So we have to keep things as natural as possible in order to make sure that they don't get sick, right? There you go. Oh, he keeps losing his piece here. Axolotls are so silly when they eat. Here. You can do it, buddy. So these, the only thing I don't like about this brand of food is it floats. And that's not a problem for like fish and things, but for axolotls that live on the bottom of the tank here, they don't necessarily find the piece if it floats to the top. But I am going to leave it there for him. Here we go. Here we go. Come on, buddy. You can do it. I wonder if he'll go up there and get it. You see it? It's not poop, it's food. Okay, while he is trying to figure out where his food is at, we may try to feed him again here in a little bit. We have another critter to meet, of course, because we always bring several on the show most of the time. Oh, yeah. Just want to make sure our camera doesn't shut off again. And we have a really neat little lizard that's going to come out and meet you guys. It's not an amphibian. It's a reptile. And this one is super cute. Her name is Rue. And Rue is a crested gecko, right? Rue's been on the show before. So this is a species that you would find in Australasia. So we've traveled all the way from Mexico City to Australasia, which is the continent of Australia and surrounding islands, right? Australasia. And this species is only from one tiny island system called New Caledonia. So this is another species that is only found in one little tiny area of the world, another very specialized area of the world. They live the island life. They are kind of a tropical type species, but not a very hot weather species either, kind of like the axolotl. Axolotls live in very cold waters. This species doesn't live in very, very cold temperatures, but moderate temperatures like the 70s and 80s are really as hot as it gets in their island paradise where they live. And this animal is strictly nocturnal. You'll see her beautiful giant eyes. Those eyes are very sensitive to light, which is why she's got her pupils slitted like that, like a cat. So most animals, if they are nocturnal and they are very visual, not every nocturnal animal uses their vision primarily, but this animal surely does. Geckos have great vision. If a nocturnal animal has great vision, they will typically have slitted pupils instead of rounded pupils. That is because slitted pupils can open up more than rounded pupils in general. So she can actually take in more light in the nighttime than an animal with a round pupil, and that will let her see a lot better in the night. Isn't that cool? Crested geckos were actually discovered way back in the 1860s, maybe like originally, right? Not maybe, it was originally discovered around the 1860s, at least officially, with records and everything. And then it was thought for many, many years that they had gone extinct because they weren't discovered again until 1994. That is a long period of time to not be seen, at least by scientists and things like that. I'm sure they were seen by some people living there natively, right? But this species was thought to be extinct. So what they thought happened was that maybe like a tropical storm wiped them out or something like that. But they were rediscovered again on a different island. So what actually happened is they didn't disappear. It was just because way back in the 1860s, they don't have good record keeping. We can't really blame them. There were no computers and nothing like that, and definitely no iPhones and no good records back then. It was kind of word of mouth or just writing things down as best they could. So what happened was they didn't understand where they actually were. They thought they were on one island, but they were actually on another island, and so the records were wrong. And again, I wasn't there, so I cannot attest to what actually happened. But they were rediscovered by someone else way, way forward in time in 1994 in New Caledonia, which again is like a little kind of system of islands right next door to Australia. And so they were there the whole time, just on the wrong island. And this animal is really neat. They are considered to be a vulnerable species to being endangered, not endangered yet, which is good. But it actually takes a lot of surveying and record keeping and all sorts of studying to have an animal be considered endangered. So, I mean, they may be endangered now. We're just not quite there in our records. I hope that makes sense. So it takes a lot of classification and official, studies and things like that to have an animal be like classified officially as endangered. But these animals are very specified to that one little area of the world in New Caledonia, tiny islands over there. And so that's the only place that they're found in the wild. So it is very, very likely that if one tiny thing goes wrong, a big tropical storm or human invasion or non-native species like feral species coming in and eating these guys, which does unfortunately happen, one of their main threats is actually giant, large ants that eat them. So there are certain species of fire ants that were brought over into their native land in New Caledonia, their island home, and they don't belong there, and they are actually so large that they can eat the crested geckos. And if you know anything about fire ants, you'll know that not many animals eat fire ants. And crested geckos do eat other ants and other bugs. They're bug-eating lizards, like most geckos. They actually eat bugs and nectar and fruit too, so that makes them an omnivore, eating both. But they cannot eat the fire ants because the fire ants are way too harsh with their venom and everything like that. So they can actually overpower animals and eat them instead. So that's a major threat to this gecko. Another threat is going to be other invasive species like feral cats and things like that eat them as well. As well as they used to be threatened by importation, which means taking them out of the wild for the pet trade and things like that. Luckily, that's not really done anymore whatsoever because crested geckos are another animal that we've been able to breed very successfully in the care of humans. In fact, they're very popular pet lizards in human care nowadays. They do make pretty decent pets for the right family. They're still a big commitment. They do live quite a long time for such a little creature. These guys can live anywhere from, I would say, man, these guys can live a long time. I'm trying to recall what their age range is. It's actually at onceinawild.com, but I believe it's anywhere from like 15 to 20. And so it's quite a long commitment for such a small creature like this. That being said, they are one of the more decent pet lizards that you can have. Very easy to care for, in my opinion. Look how cute she is. She has that cute little dolphin smile. Reminds me of a dolphin. But those big giant eyes, right? Those eyes are pretty intense. And she does not blink. You cannot win a staring contest with this lizard. I'm not even going to try because Rue has no eyelids, nor do any crested geckos. Some geckos are like that. There are many gecko species like this that have no eyelids, so they don't blink. Instead of blinking, they have to lick their eyes to keep them moisturized and clean. And again, they rely on their vision to hunt and get around. That is their best sense by far. And so she's got to keep her eyes clean if she's hanging out in the trees in New Caledonia and getting some debris or something in her eye. She's got to make sure to keep it clean, right? Y'all say, wow. Thank you for saying wow. Wow, cute. Thank you so much, Alice. Very pretty eyes. Thank you. Yes, they are so cool looking. She is the natural color as well, just like Gremlin is. Crested geckos nowadays, because they have become pets and things like that, you can see them in all sorts of colors and patterns, which is pretty fascinating. Same thing with the axolotls too. I would venture to say that there's more colors and patterns and morphs of crested geckos than axolotls. There's so many of them nowadays. That's pretty neat that they can select genetics and things like that. I'm certainly not good at that because I'm not a breeder of these guys. But this is actually the natural color that they would be in the wild. And they do change color like many other lizards can, through chromatophores in their skin, which are pore-like properties. They're kind of like little pores in their skin that are very tiny, almost microscopic. And what those little pore-like properties do, they're called chromatophores. And what chromatophores do is they will expand and contract. So they will close and open, close and open. And that will give the illusion of color change. This lizard can change color to communicate moods, and also to help regulate their temperature. And by default, it also helps them blend in. So if they're resting during the day, which is when they rest because they are nocturnal, they're awake in the night and asleep in the day. If they're sleeping on the side of a tree or something like that, they might default to a darker color. or at least a brownish color to be able to blend in. But that's not the main reason they change color. Just like all lizards, it's usually based on mood and temperature. That is usually why they do that. Look how cute she is climbing on my fingers. I think they're absolutely adorable. If you see her throat moving a little bit, up and down, kind of like a frog does. By the way, she sticks her tongue out quite a bit to taste around her to figure out what's going on. Not only do they have great vision, they have a great sense of taste. They have a good sense of smell. She's showing you that she's smelling right now by her throat moving. That's her breathing and sniffing the air too. She also has ears. Can you see those ear holes? She's got one on either side of her cheek there, of course, to hear directionally, just like us. She doesn't have any ear flaps like us, but she's got ear holes. And geckos are one of the few type of lizards that actually use their voice to talk. So crested geckos aren't too loud or anything like that, but there are many other gecko species that bark and chirp and make all sorts of noises. Tokay geckos make a sound that sounds like the word tokay. That's where they get their name. And the word gecko comes from another gecko species. I can't remember which one it is. Please let me know if you know. It's a gecko species that makes a sound that sounds like gecko. And that is where geckos get their name in the first place. Crested geckos will make kind of chirping noises and things like that. They almost sound like frogs to me when they do decide to use their voice, which is kind of rare, but they can do that. Some geckos will make noises to scare away enemies if they get grabbed by a predator and things like that. And then they use their voice to communicate sometimes between geckos. Pretty neat. Let me know if anybody has any questions or comments regarding our crested gecko, Roo. So you may be wondering why Roo is named Roo. Well, the other name for the crested gecko is the eyelash gecko. And we have several crested geckos. We have 7 of them total. Most of them are rescues. A lot of people do obtain crested geckos, buy them, pick them up for a pet, and then they decide they don't want them anymore because they do have a long life expectancy. And they may just grow tired of having them, and so they want to donate them to a good place. So a lot of our crested geckos are rescues in that way. One of them in particular is a true rescue. He was actually very sick when I got him, and now he's thriving. But most of our crested geckos, besides this one, are pretty hyper and wild acting. So I don't bring them on the show too often. Some of them are okay, but Roo by far is the most polite and sweet, calm crested gecko we have. But we have a Roo and a Paul. Roo Paul, right? So false eyelashes, makeup, all of that. That makes sense, right? We have a Roo, a Paul, Andre, Charles. Who else? Who am I leaving out? We have an Evan who originally was born on New Year's Eve one year, and I named him Eve, but he turned out to be a boy, so Evan it is, but that's okay because they're all themed to RuPaul, right? We have a Queenie and a Juju as well. So those are their names. They're all themed to go with all that. That's pretty neat. But I think they look like they're wearing falsies. And you can see they even have a crest along the side of their head there. They're pretty neat. And now I don't really know. I can't remember what the crest is actually for. It might be some sort of natural camouflage. It just look like something natural, like a plant or something like that. And speaking of which, they do have very soft skin that feels just like, to me, it feels like a rose petal. It's so very soft and pleasant to touch. They do have scales, just like all reptiles do. You can especially see how big the scales are around their lips there. They almost look like a velociraptor from Jurassic Park. Of course, we don't really know what velociraptors actually look like in real life, but I would imagine they kind of look like this with the scales around their lips and their little nostrils there. So super cute. Another thing about the crested gecko is going to, so I was going to say, by the way, is their scales are there, but they're just soft and smooth scales, almost like some snakes. And they have an amazing prehensile tail. Their tail cannot necessarily lift their entire body, but it can give them balance while climbing. Can you see her using it a little bit on my fingers there? However, that is another purpose as well. The tail gives them a purpose of being safe. So not only keeping balance, that keeps them safe, I guess, but if they were to get bitten on the tail or grabbed by the tail by a predator, say it's maybe like a bird or something like that, grabs them up and bites them on the tail can actually pop right off. And it only pops off on the base in this species. Some species of lizards that can pop off in different segments on their spine, but this specific type of lizard, their tail pops off right at the base, right at the butt, and the tail would come off fully and keep wiggling like a little worm, And that would stimulate that predator to keep eating the tail, and then the gecko could get away. However, unfortunately, they're kind of the opposite of the axolotl. Remember, axolotls can regrow their body parts, and axolotls can regrow and regenerate organs as well, not just body parts like limbs and tails and gills. Axolotls can actually regenerate hearts and organs of all sorts. Lungs, well, they don't have lungs. Gills, unless they're salamander, then they have lungs. But my point is they can regenerate their internal organs too if they become too damaged or something bites them on the side or something like that. Axolotls can even regenerate their brains and heads. Incredible. This lizard, however, cannot regenerate anything, even the tail. So if they lose their tail, that is the last time that they get to use that technique. They only get one tail and one chance to lose the tail. And then if they lose their tail, they become tailless. And a lot of crested geckos in human care, as well as in the wild, especially the wild, because there's a lot more dangerous occurrences and things that can happen to them, right? In the wild is very, very tough life. The wild is. So a lot of crested geckos don't have any tail, but you can see that Rue has her tail. She's never had to lose it. She's never been nervous enough to drop her tail for any reason. That can happen with crested geckos. Even if nothing really happens to them, they can choose to drop their tail. That's just how they are sometimes. Are their tails prehensile? I think I already answered that, but I will talk about it again. No problem. They are prehensile. However, they cannot grip onto like things and carry them around. They're not like an opossum. Opossums can carry things around with their tail, like nesting material and whatever they want. That's pretty neat. But they cannot also lift their entire body weight with the tail. They usually don't do that, but it is used for balance when they're climbing. She's using it right now. She's trying to grip onto my hand. Super cute. So it is a prehensile tail. Prehensile just means like grasping or like a fifth limb. So yes, technically it is. You said, OMG, the tail information is so cool. Yeah, so these guys are a little bit, they're just less, what's the word? They're just more limited, I guess, in their abilities to use that tail dropping technique. It's called tail autonomy. That's the technical term for it. But most lizards, of course, can like basically select different segments of the tail. Whatever gets grabbed, like the tip will come off, or the midsection, or all the way up to the base of the tail. However, this animal, no, the whole tail will come off. It's either all or nothing for this species, I suppose. Yes, thank you for saying she is with me in great care. So she has her tail. Yeah, so she doesn't really have any reason to be nervous or upset. She's also a very, very mellow type personality crested gecko, which a lot of them are. But in my experience, I don't know if it's because a lot of mine are rescues or what their deal is. Most of mine are a little bit skittish and a lot more wild acting, which is fine. I'm glad they're healthy and moving around. I only have one crested gecko out of the 7 of mine that have lost their tail, though. And I believe he lost his tail before I got him. So yeah, I do my best. So thank you for the compliment. I'm trying to see if she'll lick her eye for you guys because it's really extra cute. I love when they do that. Their tongue is so very long. Whoa, she's going to jump onto the computer screen. I was ready for her to do that though. Ta-da! She did a little leap. I don't know if you saw it at all. But they do lick their eyes, and their tongue is so long that they can reach and lick their eye, lick their face to keep them clean. So neat. They don't have a forked tongue like a snake or some lizards. They have a sticky, fleshy tongue. And these guys, I think I mentioned it already, but they do eat insects and bugs and things like that, whatever they can catch. But they also are nectar eaters. So these animals, oh, yes, you are. You are a nectar eater. Did you know that, Rue? She's like, what? She's learning all about her own species. So they will eat nectar of plants. They will eat flower nectar and all sorts of things. They'll also eat fruit, especially if it's just gone a little bit bad in the wild. They can eat a little bit like slightly rotten or turned fruit in the wild. Not super duper rotten, of course, where it's bad for them. But if there's like fruit that's been opened and things like that, or berries, they can eat those too. So they are frugivorous, eating fruit. And they are also, yeah, frugivores, eating fruit. They eat nectar as well, and insectivores, so they eat all sorts of things. But they're technically an omnivore, right? Because they have a varied diet of both plant matter and live animals. I think she's adorable. I know this is one of my mother's favorite animals, is the geckos. She really likes them. Anything else you guys want to know or ask about the crested gecko? Please let me know. I'm going to go ahead and let her rest. And she's just going to smile for that camera. Let's have one more super close-up shot. Oh my gosh, look at that. What an incredible creature. So since they don't have any eyelids, they have what's called a spectacle scale, similar to a snake, right over their eye. It is a clear scale that protects the eye. I'm going to be behind her. And so they don't have to blink. When they go to sleep, though, they do squint a little bit. And they will sleep with like a half squinted eye, but they never shut their eyes. Do you? No, you do not. Okay, you guys, she's super cute. Let me know if you would like to meet her in your own personal Zoom encounter or in person if you happen to be close by. She's a great animal to meet in person as well. She's super duper cool. All right, she's ready to run around because this is her active time. These guys are nocturnal strictly, so they're mostly out at night, mostly, right? Or only. Well, she's on another program during the day, right? She was actually in the program this morning as well. She did great. Well, it looks like Gremlin has not found his food, so I'm going to take it out and maybe try another piece. I don't want this piece to make his water too dirty, right? Let's give him another one, though. Maybe he'll catch it this time. Let's see. Have a bite. Oh. He keeps biting like little crumbs off of the pieces. What a special little critter. Good thing he lives in the care of humans and not in the wild. There we go. Come on. There you go. We try to spoil our animals around here and help him out. Look at him eat. He's so messy. Good thing this is the last program of the day. We'll be cleaning up after this. Okay, by the way, if you guys are interested in your own program, let us know. Our number's down below. You can also reach us at onceinawhile.com and check out all of our information on the animals on the website. Here's a great question about the Crested Gecko, I assume. Are they solitary or do they get along with others? They are solitary, so they don't really get along together. However, in human care, females can sometimes get along just fine. We actually have a couple of females in a larger enclosure together, and they really don't mind each other at all. We always monitor and make sure they're getting along. Everything seems fine in there, so we haven't had any issues. But males, absolutely not. That is 100% not a good idea with two males. And by the way, Crested Geckos are very easy to determine their gender. It's pretty obvious if you look it up, but at the base of the tail, you can actually see the male parts. Very, very easy. They're one of the easiest lizards to determine gender on. And if you have two males, they will absolutely fight very, very severely and hurt each other. Enjoyed? Great. I have one more animal for you guys. It's not everybody's favorite. In fact, it's not one of my favorites, but I have, over the years, grown to love them. Hopefully you'll love them too. But yes, Crested Geckos in general should be kept pretty much apart in the care of humans, especially because you have a smaller situation. However, I do have two very special females that have been together their whole life, and I've never had a problem with them together. But I don't necessarily recommend doing that unless you know thoroughly what you're doing as far as caring for them. Most reptiles in general should be kept separated. There's a few exceptions. Some snakes get along really well. Some lizards and some amphibians also get along really well too. We have fire-bellied toads here that I would love to have make an appearance very soon on the live stream. They haven't been on yet. They're smaller species of aquatic toad. Those guys are very social. And then of course our tortoises, Shelton and Frank, those are very social as well, although some tortoises are not social. So it really all depends. It's really important to do your research, and not just do your research, but also ask an expert. Ask somebody that already has experience with these things to make sure, because again, some people keep axolotls together successfully just fine. And I have never had success with that, so I don't do that. So it just all depends. And then you make your own decision, and you have to monitor your animals and make sure they're doing okay. Right, Gremlin. Gremlin is a hungry hippo, so I don't think he would get along with other axolotls. He'd probably try to eat them. So let's meet another animal really quick before we say goodbye. I appreciate you guys being out here on our live stream. Remember, the live stream is free, but you are welcome to donate, of course, as always. And all your donations are greatly appreciated. And every little bit helps our animals to thrive and stay healthy and happy, and helps our business to grow and do very well. And stay tuned for lots of fun announcements coming soon and events coming soon. Follow our social media, Facebook and Instagram, and our website, onceinawhile.com, to follow what we're doing and look for some fun announcements coming soon. So let's meet one of the animals that took me a long time to get used to. Now you might be thinking, Amanda, you love all animals. And that is right. I do love all animals, but I definitely don't love these the most. So one animal that I am kind of very afraid of are cockroaches. I'm not talking about this species that I'm about to show you. I'm talking about the wild types. in Texas anyway. In the United States, I don't like those, but this is a Madagascar hissing cockroach, a very different species than the type that we have here in the United States. So this animal only lives in the island of Madagascar. So we're talking about 3 species today that are specialized to a very, very specific and kind of small area. Now, Madagascar is the largest of the 3 areas that we're talking about in the world. We talked about the Xochimilco River Canal in Mexico City, Mexico. We talked about the New Caledonian Islands off the coast of Australia and Australasia. And now we're going over to Madagascar, which is on the coast, off the coast of Africa in the African continent, but it's a very large island, but still an island. And so when animals that don't fly or swim across the ocean live in an island type habitat, they typically only live in that island, right? Just like the Crested Gecko, they don't necessarily swim across the ocean from island to island and go surfing. They're going to stay on the island that they live on, or islands that they live on. Same thing with the Madagascar hissing cockroach. This is an endemic species to Madagascar. That's the only place they're found. So you would not see this species living in the United States, nor flying around, which is what scares me about the native cockroaches to us. He decided to leave. So sometimes roaches jump down. Do not worry. These roaches are extremely tough. Just like our scorpion friend last week, jumping down sometimes. These guys have a very tough exoskeleton. In fact, these guys are one of the toughest animals we have. They're just very small in comparison to some other animals we have. He's running away from me, so I have to catch him. So sometimes I'll be right back. Stand by. So sometimes they move very slow and sometimes they decide to run away. So what had happened was he jumped down to the keyboard and then very quickly scurried away onto the floor. So I had to go get him. But these guys are one of the few animals that we actually allow guests to hold in person, I should say, and in public sometimes. We'll allow them to hold them because if they fall, they are so well armored on their bodies that they don't get hurt. They just kind of fall and they bounce. And these guys are designed to do that in the wild as well. If they have climbed up a tree a little bit, they can climb. As you can see, he's upside down on my thumb right now. If he climbs up a tree and then decides to jump out of the tree for whatever reason, they are fine. They land on the ground and they have survived. I'm going to switch him for another roach just to give him a break, I guess. He's letting me know he's had enough. That's roach language for I am done. That's okay. We can listen to our animals, right? And they're wild. They're not domesticated, so sometimes they just have enough. So here's a female Madagascar hissing cockroach. If you didn't notice, our last Madagascar hissing cockroach friend had little horns on the top of his head. She doesn't. She's a girl. So that is a form of dimorphism. So all 3 of our animals actually today are pretty easily determined gender-wise. You can tell the difference between male and female pretty easily. And for the roaches, they're probably the easiest ones because they have little horns on the top of their head area if they're male, and if they're female, they don't have little bumps or horns on the top. That's pretty neat. Now, how do they hiss? Well, Madagascar hissing cockroaches do hiss, just like their name says, and they might hiss for different reasons. Males especially hiss a lot to flirt with females. They will hiss at them for courtship purposes, to attract mates. They also will hiss for defense. So all Madagascar hissing cockroaches can hiss for defense purposes to sound like a snake. That will mimic a snake and scare away most animals. One of their common predators is the lemur in Madagascar. Lemurs of all sorts love to eat Madagascar hissing cockroaches for a good protein source. Lemurs are omnivores too. Just like the Crested Gecko, they eat fruits and plants, and they also eat bugs and other animals too sometimes. Meat and plants, kind of like a person, right? I know you guys had your roaches for breakfast today. But my point is, these guys will actually scare away their enemies with hissing noises. That will help them stay safe. Now, how do they hiss? Well, they have these little spots on their abdomen there. As an insect, they have a head, a thorax, and an abdomen, which is most of their body is made up of their hind end or abdomen. And on their abdomen, they have little spots along their bodies. They have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on each side. So 10 little holes. We call those holes sphericals. Sphericals is how they breathe. That's all insects too. And also how they hiss. So they take a deep breath and hiss out of their sphericals. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. At least 5, if not 6 on either side. I think there's just 5. But anyway, she took a dive too. That's okay. It's okay. Settle down. Sometimes they will try to scurry away, and we just make sure they're calmed down, and then they just stay calm. Did you know that Madagascar hissing cockroaches and other invertebrates can be trained? A little bit, at least. We don't expect them to be dogs and cats or birds, but they can be trained to stay calm. We just want to make sure that they know that they're not going to be harmed, and they calm right down. But that is how they hiss. They don't use their mouth to hiss or lungs. They don't have lungs. And they're very different than us, right? They do breathe air, though, with their sphericals and their bodies. But they don't take, they don't make vocalizations with their mouth or vocal cords, so they don't have. They do have a mouth, but their mouth is just designed for eating. It can eat plants and other things. This is a detritivore, which means they eat dead and decaying plant matter. They can eat dead fruit, dead plants of all sorts. And they help to also eat the soil a little bit too and keep the soil aerated and healthy. Because what happens after they eat? Well, they use the restroom, and that creates healthy soil out the other end. And by digging around in the soil as well, they help to aerate the soil, like I said. So, but they do have a mouth that can kind of crunch up fruits and things and all the vegetation they eat. But their mouth doesn't produce any noise. So that's how they produce noise, is with their sphericals. How strange is that? Like all insect types, they do have 6 walking legs. You can see 3 of her 6 walking legs right there on this side. And on the other side, she's got 3 more, of course. The legs are connected to her thorax, which is her midsection there. And the abdomen is behind the legs there. See that? We've got a big hind end. Head, thorax, and abdomen. This species actually has kind of a little kind of covering over their head as well to help protect their head, and their tiny head is underneath. Can you see her little head? The eyes are right there on the corners of her head here, and they can see, and they even have antenna as well. So antenna exists on insects as well, and the antenna or feelers are designed to feel around and use touch, and also to smell. That is how they pick up smells too. I'm looking at your questions. Can they fly? I have cockroaches in New Orleans that can fly. Yes, we have the same type in Texas. The big, giant, we call them water bugs or giant cockroaches. They do fly, and they are terrifying. I'm not a fan of those. These do not fly. They don't have wings. Thank goodness. If this thing flew at me, I would be a little bit startled. No, they don't have any wings. So they just run. They can only run. They can climb. They can scurry away. They could jump off of things if they feel a little bit nervous, like we saw him and her doing as well. So if they're climbing up a tree a little bit, which they are pretty good at climbing, they have really, really good little gripping, the ends of their legs are gripping, and they can climb up a tree or whatever they want to in the wild rock or whatever. And if maybe they see an enemy or something scary, they will just jump right down like you saw. That's kind of their instinct, and they're very tough. The sphericals are the little dots. So the little dots on her hind end there, see those little dots in a row? Those are actually little holes that they breathe out of. So they're not the only animals that have them. All insects have sphericals. That's how they breathe. There's even other critters that have sphericals too. Good questions, you guys. But no, they do not fly. Thank goodness. That's why I'm a little bit more comfortable with this type of roach. And there are so many different types of roach in the world, by the way. We tend to be a little bit grossed out by roaches, but not every roach is created equal, and these guys are not dirty either. Look at that cute little head. Hello! He's waving with her antenna, trying to figure out what's going on around here. Can you see her little eyes? I wonder if you can see. They're not as big as the Crested Gecko's eyes for sure, and they are black, so they blend right into her head, but they're located on the corners of her head. 2 little eyes. Can you see them? I don't know if you can see or not. Maybe with my white skin in the background, you can see. Can you see her eyes? They're right above her antenna. They're very tiny. Her head is very tiny too. And I forgot what I was going to say. These guys are not the same, like I said, as like dirty cockroaches too, because we think of cockroaches as carrying diseases and things. Those are the ones we need to worry about out in nature that can make us sick. The reason that these guys don't make us sick is because they don't eat food items that make them full of disease. They only eat plants, and they're only found in Madagascar, so nothing to worry about. They don't typically have a ton of babies either, like other roaches do. Their babies are actually born live, and they will come out from mom, and then there will just be like a small amount of them in comparison to other roaches. They have a litter. It's usually like anywhere from 12 to maybe 20 at a time, which isn't a ton for an insect. A lot of insects have a lot more babies than that. But these guys don't, and they're little nymphs. That's what we call baby cockroaches, cockroach nymphs. And they're like little miniatures of the adults. When they come out initially and they're born, they are white, and eventually they will harden to a brownish shell like this, your exoskeleton, right? But these guys also have an amazing onboard cleaning crew that I wish I had all the time, called Madagascar hissing cockroach mites. You might think that that's disgusting, but guess what? Humans have mites too. They're just very tiny. They're microscopic and we can't see them, but you're never alone. You've always got mites in your eyebrows. Try to sleep at night now. But these guys actually have bigger mites than us, which is saying something because they're small critters compared to us, right? But they have little mites all over their body. I wish you could see them. They're white and they're super tiny. They're actually clear. I call them white, but they're clear. But they're like little Roombas all over the roach. They don't hurt them. They don't harm anything. They're just there to clean up. They're like little maid service. I call them Roombas because they're like little vacuum cleaners, but they help to clean up all the roaches' food that they're eating and getting all over themselves. They clean up all the dirt that they're crawling around in and messiness there and all the germs. And they also clean up all the dead skin off of the roach themselves. So that helps them to stay nice and, what do you call it? Exfoliated. So what a service that those mites actually provide to the roach. And the only place you can find Madagascar hissing cockroach mites is on Madagascar hissing cockroaches. And the only place that you can find Madagascar hissing cockroaches is on Madagascar. So it's like Inception. Madagascar, the roaches, the mites, and then who knows after that, there could be some microscopic properties going on after that. So in that way, they are so very neat in their own way because they're like their own island or environment for those little animals living on them. How neat is that? But those mites do not infest humans or any other creatures. They only live on the roaches for whatever reason. And they're just passed on, you know, from roach to roach when they're born and things like that. And they share them and they just live right on the roaches. He said, oh no, the triplets won't sleep now. They'll be fine. The more you know, right? Or the less you know, the more you can sleep. So look it up. It's pretty neat. We all have microscopic properties on our skin, right? So we are all kind of like our own little ecosystem ourselves too. So we're all very important to something else. Do they burrow? They can dig a little bit, but they're not the strongest diggers. That's a really good question though. Do they burrow? They like to live on the ground or up like maybe like a little bit ways up the tree sometimes, mostly on the ground in the leaf litter. They don't really need to burrow and make like a big tunnel system or anything like that. They can live very comfortably underneath some leaves, plants, out of the cover of the light. They're mostly nocturnal, but they'll come out a little bit in the evening and the morning too. Not strictly nocturnal like the Crested Gecko, but most roaches are kind of photophobic or light sensitive, so they prefer to be underneath something. So how we keep them here at Once in a Wild is we have an enclosure with a bunch of tree leaves in it so they can climb up if they want to. They can also climb straight up the plastic container that they live in because they're really good climbers. But they also have a lot, we get them a lot of leaf litter at the bottom and some mulch and things like that. And they don't really dig into the mulch that much. They might just go under a leaf and just rest under there. And we feed them all sorts of fruits and vegetables as well as, what else do we feed them? That's pretty much it. I mean, they thrive off of that. They also get what we call browse, which is natural tree leaves that we give them that are safe for them to eat, and some other natural plants too. You can also offer them dog and cat food. It's not necessary really. It gives them a little extra protein, but that's not something that they would naturally eat in the wild very often. So we opt to give them plant protein instead. We give them all sorts of plants to eat. Their favorite food by far, it seems to be bananas. They really like their bananas. A lot of animals like bananas. Sandor, our rabbit, really likes bananas. BT, our blue-tongued skink lizard, really likes bananas. All those animals that eat fruits. Bananas is like where it's at for them for some reason. So the roaches too, that's some of their favorite food. And we don't know how many roaches we have. That's a really fun fact about Once in a Wild because they are always having babies for us, which tells me that they're doing well if they want to keep breeding. We have males and females, as you saw. And a lot of times they end up being moms, and we do keep the babies to be able to always kind of have them. Fun thing about Madagascar hissing cockroaches is they are actually one of the longest lived of all the insects, which is why they make sense for outreach and animal programs, because most insects only live for a matter of weeks or months. So once they become an adult phased insect like this, most insects don't live very long after that. So they will start as an egg or a nymph, and then they will grow up into an adult. And after that, they don't have a very long life expectancy. But the Madagascar hissing cockroaches have one of the longest life expectancies for a bug like this or an insect. They can live up to 5 years. So that makes a lot of sense to keep them around for programs like this. They're awesome for that. They're also very safe to hold and also very tough if they fall, as you saw before. I've never had a Madagascar hissing cockroach really injure itself by falling. It just doesn't really happen. They're super tough. Also, they are always having babies for us, so we always have backups. So we don't really know how many babies we have. It's almost impossible to count. I guess I could go count them, but it's always growing in numbers. But our adults, I believe, are numbered about 12 now. We have 12 adults. This is one of our prettiest, in my opinion, females. You saw our really pretty male that had earlier too. But I think they're doing very well if they're having babies for us. But most insects, like I said, don't live very long at all. These guys live a lot longer than most insects do, which is pretty awesome. Even for the roach family, these guys are one of the longer lived. Okay, you guys, well, I hate to scare you and give you nightmares, but I hope you've maybe conquered your fears a little bit. I certainly have over the years of handling these roach friends. I have come to accept them over time and getting used to them. They're really not so bad. They definitely don't harm us. They're not dirty and they're not really that fast unless they really just want to get away. And they don't come after you or anything like that. And they don't fly and they don't bite. And they're not so bad. They kind of remind me of like a beetle or something like that. And I'm okay with beetles and other insects like that. But I hope you guys have learned something and maybe one day we can meet in person and you can conquer your fear of bugs. If that happens to be one of your fears or phobias, we would love to help you out with that. These guys are not that bad. They also kind of feel very smooth to the touch, like smooth wood. Very, very nice to touch. They're not gross. They're not slimy or anything like that. And yeah, so they're really neat. But I hope you guys have enjoyed our program today. Hope we didn't scare you too much. And I think Gremlin was super cute, as well as Rue, the Crusted Gecko. And we'd love to see you next week here at the same time on the same day, which is Wednesday at 6:30 p.m. Central Time, of course, because we're here in Texas. And thank you so very much for watching from all sorts of places. We really appreciate all of our friends, family, and followers. And we love you guys. And we hope to see you next week. And stay tuned for some exciting announcements coming up, as well as some of our events coming up. But we'd love to see you next week, and we'll say goodbye for now. Bye, guys. So that's actually our intro. So you're welcome. We got to see it twice. So now we're going to say goodbye. Bye, guys. We are nothing close to ordinary, but we love to be your friend. Hold our hands and let's have fun together, singing as loud as you can. Everybody singing once in a while. Be together once in a while. I want to hear you say once in a while. Never fun for me and you. Okay, you guys, don't bug out. We'll see you next week on Wednesday at 6:30 p.m. Central. Say bye, roaches. Face the camera. There we go. Say bye, roaches. Wave goodbye. Bye.